ChatGPT said. The morning felt soft and kind, the way good days do. Helen stood by the mirror and fixed the small clasp on her blue dress. She smoothed the fabric and laughed at herself because her hands were shaking. Today Emily was getting married. Today the years of worry and late bills and lonely dinners would sit quietly in the corner while Joy took the big chair. She kissed Toby on the head. "Guard the house, little man," she said. Toby wagged his tail and blinked as if he understood everything. The car smelled like flowers from the bouquet on the passenger seat. Helen drove slowly at first, letting the road and the sky calm her. The countryside venue sat an hour away, all green hills and white chairs and ribbons that moved like quiet waves. When she arrived, Emily turned and gasped. "Mom, you look beautiful." Helen felt her eyes sting. "Not as beautiful as you," she said, and it was true. Emily glowed in her dress, cheeks soft with happiness, hair pinned with tiny pearls. For a moment, Helen saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on the sofa while cartoons played too loud. She swallowed and breathed through the ache in her chest. It was a good ache, the kind that comes with love. Guests arrived. Hugs came in waves. Laughter spilled like warm light. The music started, the strings gentle and bright. Helen moved between tables, straightening napkins that did not need straightening, checking the cake, thanking the florist, touching Emily's hand again and again, just to feel that she was real. Her phone buzzed once. She let it go. It buzzed again. She frowned and checked the screen. Nancy. Her neighbor never called during the day unless a package arrived or a storm broke a fence. The phone buzzed a third time. Helen stepped behind a hedge where it was quiet. "Hello," she whispered. Nancy's voice was thin and fast. "Helen, does anyone else have your house keys?" Helen blinked. "No." "Why?" "There's a moving truck at your door," Nancy said. Helen could hear wind and the soft click of her gate. "A man is carrying your TV. He's going in and out like it's nothing." Helen's heart stuttered. "What man? Did you call the police?" "I didn't yet. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy." "A beat." "Helen, he is Toby. He just put your dog in the front of the truck." The world tilted. The music from the lawn became a faraway echo. "Nancy, listen to me. Do not go near him. Call the police now." "I'm coming." She ended the call, breathing hard. Her hands would not work. She pressed the wrong icon twice before the screen cleared. She forced herself to walk toward the ceremony, not run, not scream. She would not ruin Emily's vows. She found her daughter behind the arbor, waiting for the music cue. "Mom?" Emily asked, eyes wide. "There's a problem at home," Helen said softly. Nancy called. "A man is taking things. Toby is with him." Emily's mouth opened, then closed. "Do you need me?" Helen touched her cheek. "You need to get married. I'll fix this." She tried to smile and almost did. "I'll be back before the dancing." Emily nodded, brave and shining. "Text me." Helen turned and moved fast, her heels sinking into the lawn, her breath short. At the edge of the parking lot, she slipped off her shoes, tossed them in the car, and drove. The bouquet fell to the floor with a soft thump. Her fingers tightened on the wheel until they hurt. She called 911 and spoke clearly, like someone reading a recipe. She gave her name, her address, the details Nancy had given her. The operator said, "Officers are on the way." Helen said thank you, as if politeness could keep her house from being emptied. The road home felt longer than it had that morning. Every red light was a tide pulling her back. She pictured Toby's warm body and his confused eyes. She pictured her living room without the framed photos, the bookshelf, the blue armchair where she read on Sundays. She thought of the lock she had meant to replace and never did. Guilt tightened her throat. She turned off the radio. She talked to the empty car. "Please let this be a mistake. Please let him be at the wrong address." She turned onto her street and saw the blue lights first. 2 police cars, doors open, lights spinning. A white truck stood in front of her house with its back open like a mouth. Half her living room was inside it. Her breath left her body. She parked crooked and climbed out barefoot. An officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, please wait behind the tape." "That's my house," she said. "That's my dog." Another officer approached. "Helen Price." "Yes. We got the call. Your neighbor's safe. We're talking to the man now." Helen looked past him, trying to see around the truck. Toby barked once from somewhere, high and scared. Her vision blurred. "Please." The officer hesitated, then guided her to the side of the driveway. "Stay here, okay?" The man near the truck turned at the sound of her voice. He moved slowly, almost carefully, as if he expected a slap from the air. For a second Helen could not place the face. Time had drawn new lines there. Then the ground slid under her. "Mark," she whispered. He stared at her like a man waking from a bad dream. "Helen." Her mouth went dry. "What are you doing in my house?" Mark glanced at the officer, then back at her. This is a misunderstanding," the landlord said. He stopped, seeing her eyes, seeing decades of history rushing over both of them. "I can explain." "There is nothing to explain," Helen said, but her voice trembled. Old habits jumped to life. Anger, yes, but also the tired knowledge that Mark never planned well, that he believed anyone with a clipboard and a nice smile. "You don't live here. You don't even know the code to the gate." "I have a lease," he said. He sounded like a child defending broken glass. "I paid a deposit. He gave me keys." Helen shook her head hard, as if that could throw the words off her. "This is my home. I bought it after you left. There is no landlord." The officer stepped between them. "We'll sort this out. Sir, please show me the paperwork." Mark handed over a folder with careful, sad hands. The officer flipped through the pages, frowning at the neat signatures, the stamped receipt, the copy of an ID that carried Helen's name, but not her face. Another bark. "Toby." Helen leaned, trying to see past the truck. "My dog." A younger officer led Toby from the back seat of a car, a blanket around his shoulders like a tiny cape. Helen dropped to her knees on the gravel and gathered him up. He shook and then melted against her chest, heartbeat fast as a bird's. "It's okay," she whispered into his fur. "I'm here. I'm here." When she stood, dust clung to her knees, and her hands left soft prints on her dress, but she did not care. The officer returned the folder to Mark. "Something's off," he said. "We're going to need statements from both of you." Helen looked at Mark. He looked smaller than she remembered. Not thinner, smaller, like a man who had been folded in on himself for years. He wouldn't meet her eyes. For a moment the old anger loosened. The past is heavy, but it doesn't always kill you, she thought. Sometimes it just sits beside you, quiet and stubborn. "Who did this, Mark?" she asked softly. "Who told you this was your place?" He swallowed. "A man named Brian. Online listing. He said you moved away. He sent documents." It all looked real. Helen felt a cold thread slide down her spine. It wasn't a simple mistake. Someone had chosen her house. Someone had picked her life up in their hands and shaken it. She pulled Toby closer and stared at the open door of her home. The couch was at an angle. One of the picture frames had cracked. The air smelled like dust and strangers. Behind her, the wedding music lived in another world. Here, the day was different. Here, the story had taken a hard turn. She squared her shoulders, wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, and nodded to the officer. "Okay," she said. "Let's fix this." Blue lights washed over the front wall like cold water. Helen stood with Toby in her arms, feeling the beat of his small heart against her chest. The officer with the calm eyes, his badge said Raza, guided her to the porch step. "Ma'am, we'll need a statement. Then we'll help you secure the place." Helen nodded. Her voice came out thin. "Okay." Mark stood a few feet away with another officer. He kept looking at the folder like the papers might change if he stared hard enough. He looked older. His hair had more gray, his shoulders sloped a little, and his hands shook when he put the folder down. Nancy hurried over from her yard, breathless, holding her phone. "I filmed what I could," she said. "I didn't go too close." "Thank you," Officer Raza said, taking the phone and airdropping the clips to his tablet. "This helps." Helen brushed dust from her dress and tried to slow her breathing. The wedding, the vows, the music, all of it felt far away now, like a dream she had left too soon. Her phone buzzed. "Emily, are you okay? Do you want me to come?" Helen typed with steady fingers she did not feel. "I'm safe. Police are here. I'll update you soon. I love you. Enjoy your day." She hit send before she could change her mind. She would not let this steal Emily's joy. Inside the house, everything looked almost normal and also not at all. The couch was angled toward the door. The bookshelf leaned with gaps where favorite books used to sit. One photo frame lay face down on the rug. Helen picked it up and winced at the crack across the glass. It was a picture of her and Emily at the beach, wind in their hair, sun on their noses. She set it gently on a table and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Ma'am," Officer Raza said softly, "let's walk through together. Tell me what seems missing." They moved room by room. Helen spoke in short breaths. "TV. Speakers. 2 suitcases from the closet. The silver box with letters. The blue armchair by the window. A jewelry tray from my bedside table. It has no diamonds, but it has my mother's pin. Any cash kept at home? No, she said. Just receipts and bills. Raza wrote quickly. He looked up. Doorbell camera? Yes, Helen said. But it only saves clips for a few days. We'll pull what we can. They went back outside. Mark was rubbing his forehead now, like a headache had started and would not leave. The other officer, a woman named Sadaf, handed Raza the folder. He studied the lease again, then checked the signatures against his tablet. This landlord used a fake business name, he said. And the ID copy for the owner doesn't match DMV records. It's a clean scam. Too clean. Mark blew out a breath. I answered a listing 2 weeks ago. The ad said the owner was moving abroad for 6 months. He said the place would be empty this weekend for renovation prep. He gave me a time. He had keys. Mark stopped, the words catching. I know how it looks, Helen. But I'm not a thief. Helen looked at him for a long second. She remembered old days when he would promise to fix something and then forget, when he trusted the wrong person and called it bad luck. She also remembered how he used to fall asleep sitting up after double shifts, how he burned toast but tried again until it was right. People were not one thing, she thought. They were many things at once. Where did you meet him? Raza asked. At a coffee shop on 3rd, Mark said. He brought an envelope. Keys. Printed lease. He had a clipboard like a real agent. Said he was in a rush. He even joked about traffic. Name? Sadaf asked. He said Brian Cole, Mark answered. But he used a different email later. BC Properties Rentals. Raza opened Nancy's video. In the clip, a man in a cap moved quickly from house to truck, then back. The angle was off, but you could see steady hands and a confident step. The face never turned to the camera. Another clip showed the back of his jacket. A small tear near the shoulder seam. Not much, but something. We'll pull footage from nearby cameras too, Raza said. Street corners. Gas station on the main road. If he drove this truck from a rental place, we can trace it. Nancy touched Helen's arm. I'm sorry you had to run from the wedding. You did the right thing, Helen said. You saved Toby. At the sound of his name, Toby looked up, ears lifting like small flags. He licked Helen's wrist. She smiled despite herself. They changed the locks that afternoon. A 24-hour locksmith arrived in a van, chatter loud and friendly, tools bright as silver teeth. He pulled out the old cylinder and slid in a new one. No one gets in with the old key now, he said. If you want, we can do the back door and the side gate too. Do all of them, Helen said. Please. Mark stood by the truck, talking to the moving men he had hired. They were upset and confused too. They had a job order, a location, a time. They showed the app on their phone, a short line of text. Load items from residence per client instruction. Nothing more. Raza told them they could leave the items on the lawn until photos were taken. We need to document, he said. Then everything goes back inside. As the sun lowered, the front yard looked like a living room spilled onto grass, armchair, rolled carpet, lamp, stacked boxes. Helen stood with a clipboard the officers gave her, checking each piece before it returned. She touched every object like a promise. Yes, that's mine. Yes, that too. When the blue armchair came back through the door, she let out a small laugh that sounded like a sob. Her phone buzzed again. Emily, we're married. We're okay. I love you. She sent a picture. The bride and groom under a sky of tiny lights, joy shining like a soft fire. Helen pressed the screen to her heart for a second. You're okay, she whispered. Raza returned with a printout from the doorbell app. The clips were grainy but clear enough. They showed a hand slipping a key into Helen's lock without hesitation. The hand had a small scar across the knuckle, pale and thin like a white thread. The key turned smooth. No struggle. No guesswork. Whoever did this had the right key, Raza said. Either a copy of yours or a key from an old lock set. Helen frowned. Years ago, I kept a spare under a planter. But I stopped. I threw it away. She paused, memory tugging. I also gave a spare to a relative when I had surgery. I don't remember if I got it back. She felt heat creep up her neck. Carelessness had a way of rewriting itself as kindness in your memory. Which one had it been? Raza nodded. Make a list of anyone who ever had a key or access. Cleaners, handymen, family, friends. We'll cross-check. Mark cleared his throat. I can help with the list. I met some of them years ago. Helen looked at him, surprised. Thank you. By evening, the furniture was back in place. The house felt like itself again, even if the air still held the sharp smell of strangers and dust. Helen poured water into Toby's bowl and watched him drink, head down, tail slowly wagging like a small metronome. The quiet after chaos felt heavy and kind at the same time. On the porch, Mark hovered like a man unsure of the rules. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked. "Or stay until the locksmith finishes the side gate?" "Stay," Helen said. The word surprised her. But fear and pride were both tired now, and there was practical work to do. They sat on the steps while the locksmith's drill hummed. Streetlights blinked on. Nancy brought tea in 2 mismatched mugs and left them by the railing like a peace offering. Across the street, a child's bike lay in the grass, one wheel still spinning. "I didn't go to the wedding," Mark said after a while. "I didn't think I should. I didn't think I was wanted." "You were invited," Helen said. "You're her father." He nodded, shame soft on his face. "I know." Silence settled between them, not warm, not cold. Just true. Raza came back with a last update. "We've flagged the truck plate," he said. "It was rented yesterday under a prepaid card. We'll pull the rental office cameras. Also, we noticed your public post about the wedding this morning. Time and location were visible. It may have helped the timing." Helen closed her eyes for a second. "I thought only friends could see." "Sometimes friends share," Raza said gently. "Happens all the time." When the officers left, the yard was empty again, the house locked with new keys, the truck gone, the blue lights just memory. Helen stood in the doorway and looked at Mark. "I need to rest," she said. "I'll speak to the detectives tomorrow." "I'll bring the receipts," Mark said. "Everything I paid. Every message. If it helps." "It will," she said. He took a step backward, then paused. "For what it's worth, when he talked about you, he sounded like he knew you. Not just your name. He knew you kept a blue chair by the window. He knew about Toby. He called him the Golden One." It felt personal. A small chill walked down Helen's spine. She gripped the edge of the door. "Thank you for telling me." After he left, she fed Toby, washed her face, and sat in the blue chair that was back where it belonged. The house creaked softly around her, the way it always did. She stared at the list she had started, people with keys. She wrote names slowly, carefully. One name made her hand stop. She had not thought of him in a long time. She underlined it once, then twice. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, the air held its breath. Helen switched off the lamp and looked into the dark window, where her face floated like a pale moon. "Tomorrow," she whispered to her reflection. "We find you." Morning came slow, like a shy guest at the door. Helen woke before the sun and sat in the blue chair, the new keys on the table, Toby asleep at her feet. The list of names lay open. One name was underlined twice. She stared at it until the letters almost moved. Officer Raza called at 8. "We pulled more clips," he said. "Your doorbell shows a hand with a thin scar across the knuckle. The same hand opens the lock twice, calm and sure. We also got street footage. The truck came from a rental office on West Avenue. We're heading there now." "I'll come," Helen said. At the rental office, coffee smelled burned and the ceiling fan ticked. A young clerk, nervous and kind, scrolled through camera footage. Raza stood behind him, arms folded. Helen watched the screen. A man in a dark jacket, cap low, walked in like he knew exactly where to stand. He kept his face turned away, talking with his hands. When he reached for the pen, the camera caught the scar again, white line across the knuckle. He paid with a prepaid card signed B. Cole, and left with calm shoulders, like a person who had rehearsed. The clerk printed the stills. Raza slid them into a folder. "We'll cross-check with other cases." Helen touched the paper. The picture was clear and not clear at the same time. The cap's shadow hid the eyes. The jaw looked familiar and also not. A feeling rose in her, old and uneasy, like a song she could almost place. They drove to the coffee shop on 3rd where Mark had met the so-called landlord. Mark was already there, a stack of papers in a neat pile on the table. He stood when Helen entered, unsure whether to smile. She gave a small nod. He looked relieved, like a man allowed to breathe. The barista remembered the meeting. "He ordered black coffee," she said, drying a cup. "Sat by the window. He didn't look up much. He smelled like motor oil? Or metal? Not fancy. Work smell. Did you see his face?" Raza asked. "Not really," she said. "But he had a tear in his jacket near the shoulder. Right side. The same tear Nancy had captured." The detail tightened the net around Helen's heart. They went over Mark's messages. The emails were short, polite, with exact times. The phone number was from a cheap online provider. The voice notes were brief. In one of them, the man laughed softly and said, "Don't worry, mate. The golden one is friendly. Toby." Helen felt the floor roll under her again. He knew the dog, and not from photos alone. The way he said it, familiar, not guessing. Back home, Helen opened a box of old keys and memories. She found a small envelope with a note from years ago. For emergencies, give to family only. Inside was a spare key she thought she had lost. The envelope was torn on one side, like someone had slid the key out and put it back once. She stared at the tear and felt heat in her face. She called her aunt. "Is Aaron in town?" she asked. Aaron was her cousin's son, once a skinny teenager who ate cereal at her kitchen table and laughed at silly shows with Emily. Years ago, during his mother's illness, Helen had driven him to school, given him pocket money, told him he could nap on the blue chair after homework. Aunt Ruth sighed. "He came back last month. Says he's working odd jobs. He asked about you, actually. Said he might stop by, but I told him you were busy with Emily's wedding." The line went very quiet. Helen pressed her fingers to her eyes. "Does he have a scar on his right hand?" "Yes," Ruth said slowly. "He cut it on a fence when he was little." "Why?" "No reason," Helen said, and her voice didn't sound like hers. She shared the name with Raza. "He didn't write it down right away." "We can't jump," he said kindly. "But we can check. We'll pull DMV photos and compare jaw lines, ear shape, height, gait. We'll also look at pawn shops, storage units, any place someone might have moved items fast." Helen nodded. "I understand." She called Emily next. "I'm okay," she said before anything else. "I'm sorry I left." "You protected our home," Emily said. "That's what you do. Do you have a lead?" "Maybe," Helen said. She didn't say the name. She would not put that pain on Emily's wedding week. "I'm working with the police." After lunch, Helen sat with Mark at the kitchen table. The sunlight made dust swim in the air. Toby lay between them, chin on paws. The house looked normal, but the silence was new. "I kept thinking last night," Mark said, voice low. He knew too much. "The chair by the window. Toby. The timing with the wedding. That's not random." "No," Helen said. "And his voice," Mark added, frowning hard, searching his memory like a lost pocket. There was a word he used. "Mate." But he switched once and said Ani by accident. Then corrected to ma'am. It was quick, like a slip. Helen stared at him. The room seemed to tilt again, not with fear this time, but with recognition. A child once called her auntie without thinking. A child who used to nap in that chair and call Toby the golden one. Raza texted, "Can you come to the station? We have something." In the small interview room, he placed two printed frames side by side. One was from the rental office, the jaw, the cap, the torn shoulder. The other was from a traffic camera 2 streets from Helen's house, taken hours earlier on a different day. No cap, head turned halfway toward the light. The face was blurred, but the shape of the ear, the slope of the cheek, the thin white scar on the knuckle as he adjusted the mirror, those were sharp enough. Raza spoke gently. "We ran facial probability. It's not a perfect match, but it's high. We also pulled a record, a minor charge from years back, trespassing during a teenage dare. The knuckle scar matches the medical photo in that file. And we found recent calls from his number to a prepaid provider used by the rental office customer." Helen looked and looked until the shapes became memory. She remembered a boy who ate too fast, who fixed a stuck drawer for her without being asked, who once stood on this very porch and said, "Auntie, one day I'll pay you back for everything." She swallowed. "I know who it is." Raza nodded. "We'll do this the right way. We'll bring him in. No noise, no risk." "Let me call him," Helen said. "He'll run if he feels the door behind him." "That's dangerous," Raza said. "I won't ask him to come here," she said. "I'll ask him to meet me somewhere public. You'll be nearby." Her voice steadied with each word. "Please. He knows me. He owes me the truth." They set it up for the next afternoon at the park by the old library. Wide space, benches, a fountain that covered the sound of voices. Raza's team would blend in. Helen would sit where the cameras could see. If he came, it would end. If he didn't, they had enough to move without her. That night Helen walked room to room, touching the edges of her life. She straightened the bookshelf, set the beach photo in a new frame, and tightened the loose screw on the lamp. She opened the old envelope and held the torn paper in her hand. She wasn't sure if the tear happened years ago or yesterday. Maybe both. Maybe kindness and carelessness shared the same thin edge. Before sleep, she wrote a message she did not send. Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk. I will listen. But come as the boy I knew, not the man who wears a cap. Morning came bright and clear, with a sky that held its breath. Helen dressed simply, tied her hair back, and slipped the new keys into her bag. On her way out, she touched the blue chair and whispered, "Stay." At the park, she sat on the bench by the fountain. Nancy waited at the far end with a book. Mark stood across the street, pretending to check his tire. Raza leaned on a lamppost, looking like anyone. The water rose and fell, like a heart that refused to give up. At 3:07, a figure appeared at the corner. Dark jacket, cap low, right shoulder seemed torn. He paused, scanned the path, and started toward her. As he drew closer, Helen saw the thin white line on his knuckle, saw the mouth she once wiped after cereal, saw the eyes that would not meet hers. He stopped 2 steps away. "Auntie," he said before he could stop himself. Then he flinched and corrected. "Ma'am." Helen didn't move. Her voice was soft and steady. "Sit down," she said. "Let's talk about my house." Helen watched the figure in front of her, standing a few steps away, his face half hidden by the cap. The familiar words, "Auntie," slipped from his mouth before he quickly corrected himself to "ma'am." She felt a tightness in her chest. It was him, Aaron, her cousin's son, a boy she had helped raise, a boy who had once slept on her couch and laughed with Emily over cartoons. The same boy who had promised to repay her kindness someday. She never thought the day would come like this. He stood there, unsure, not looking at her. His hands twitched at his sides. Helen's heart beat fast, but she kept her voice steady. "Aaron," she said softly, watching him. "Sit down. We need to talk." He hesitated, but then lowered himself to the bench beside her, keeping his head down. The park was quiet around them. The sound of the fountain splashing into the pond was the only thing breaking the silence between them. Helen tried not to focus on the thoughts that were pushing at the edges of her mind. She needed to hear him speak, to understand why he was doing this. "Why?" she asked, her voice calm but full of pain. "Why take everything from me? My home, my things, my dog? I trusted you." Aaron shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the ground. For a moment, he didn't say anything. The minutes felt long, and Helen could feel her patience stretching thin. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Aaron said, his words barely above a whisper. I was desperate, and I thought if I could make enough money, maybe I could fix everything. I've been trying to get my life together, you know? You never saw that side of me, Ani. I didn't want to disappoint you." Helen felt a cold shiver pass through her. It wasn't the apology she had hoped for, but it was an explanation. Desperation. The kind of desperation she had seen in so many people who felt like they had nowhere else to turn. She tried to keep her voice steady. "You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to hurt me. Why didn't you just ask me for help, Aaron? I would have helped you." Aaron's eyes finally met hers, but they were filled with shame. "I didn't want to be a burden. I thought if I could just take a shortcut, if I could get enough money fast, everything would be different. I could fix things. I could start fresh." He paused. "And then I saw the house. I knew you weren't home, and I saw how easy it was to just take it." Helen felt a lump in her throat. This was not the young man she had once known. The boy who had sat at her table, eaten her food, and shared her family moments. This was a stranger, someone who had been swallowed by his own mistakes and poor decisions. "You really thought I wouldn't notice?" Helen asked, trying to keep her voice from breaking. "You thought I wouldn't know my own life, my own house? My things?" Aaron looked away again, guilt written all over his face. "I didn't think it through. I should have known better. But I just needed a way out, Auntie. I don't know what I was thinking." The silence between them stretched long. Helen tried to process what he had just said. Desperation was one thing, but what he had done was something far different. It wasn't just stealing her things. He had lied to her. He had used her trust and manipulated her family. And now there was no undoing it. Helen felt the sting of betrayal. "You really thought that taking my things would solve your problems? You've been playing with fire, Aaron. You've hurt people who cared about you. You've hurt me." He nodded, his eyes glistening with the first sign of emotion she had seen from him. "I know. I've been stupid. I just didn't know who to turn to." Helen took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the moment, the words hanging in the air like the final decision. She had always been a fixer. She had always been the one to help, to hold things together. But this time, she wasn't sure if she could fix this. She wasn't sure if she even should. Aaron, she said softly, trying to choose her words carefully. You're not a lost cause. But you've crossed a line. This is something you have to make right, not just for me, but for yourself. You can't keep running from your problems. You need to own up to what you've done. He swallowed hard, tears welling in his eyes. I will. I swear, Ani, I will. I'll fix it. I'll turn myself in. I'll pay you back. I don't want to lose everything, especially not you. Helen's heart wavered. She knew that Aaron was lost, and maybe he had always been in some way. But he wasn't beyond saving. She had to believe that. It was the only way to make peace with this moment, with the deep hurt that was swirling in her chest. I don't know what will happen after this, she said, her voice steady. But I'm not going to protect you from the consequences. You have to face them. He nodded, the tears slipping down his cheeks now. I know. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to do what I can to make it right. I promise. Helen sat there for a long time, looking at the boy she had once loved like a son, seeing him as a broken man who had made terrible choices. But she also saw the small spark of something, remorse maybe, or the beginning of a change. She wasn't sure if he could turn it all around, but she knew this was the beginning of him taking responsibility for his actions. The sound of footsteps behind them made her turn. Raza and his team were approaching, standing just out of earshot, waiting for the moment to move in. Helen looked at Aaron one last time. She didn't know if she could forgive him yet, but she knew that in this moment, she wasn't going to let him walk away without facing the truth. Raza, she called, her voice firm. He's ready. He'll come with you. Aaron looked up at her with a mix of fear and gratitude. He stood, his hands shaking. I'm sorry, Auntie, he whispered again, his voice breaking. I'm sorry. Helen didn't say anything more. She just nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had made. She had done what she could. Now it was time for him to take the steps to fix his life, no matter how long it took. As Aaron walked away with Raza's team, Helen felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The pain of betrayal still stung, but there was no more weight on her shoulders. She had faced the truth. She had confronted the one who had hurt her, and she had let him take responsibility. The day was still bright, the park still peaceful, but the world around her felt a little different now. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, she could breathe again. She took a deep breath, turning toward the fountain, and whispered to herself, It's over. It's done. And for the first time, she believed it.